What's gotten you all pissy? For fuck's sake, when does it end? I get it. I covered this topic so many times you're probably sick of it. But I recently decided that I wouldn't go back to this topic unless I could add something other than the typical arguments. And lo and behold, I found a video where I could do just that. Also, get an eye for the like to dislike ratio that this video currently has. That's how you can tell that it's well made. Be forewarned, if you thought Liam McAvoy's take on lollies was bad, Devils blows his clear out of the water.
Today's video is going to be diving into the strange world of lolly, a kink which many normal people would label as one of the most degenerate things you can jerk your dick to.
I want you to keep that comment about it being a kink in the back of your head, because he's going to contradict himself almost immediately.
I briefly covered this topic in my last video, where me and my friends simply glazed across the subject of lolly and why we think it's wrong.
Okay, and that's an opinion, which is fine. So why exactly are you making this video again?
Lolly is a disgusting, depraved fetish, and anybody who indulges and enjoys the content it provides is an equally sick and disgusting human being.
Ah, there's the contradiction. We're barely a minute in, and he can't even keep his narrative consistent. This bodes very well.
But why is that the case? I mean, it's not a real girl. They're just anime children. There's no real victim here. So why does it matter?
It doesn't matter, but there's 18 minutes left in this video, so get on with it.
People who enjoy lolly tend to use these coping mechanisms and excuses to try and justify their sick mental insanity as nothing more than a harmless kink. But I think it's very clear to everybody with a sane mind that there may be something far more sinister to these supposedly harmless kinks.
So far, this is reading almost exactly like Liam McAvoy's video on the topic. I'm starting to notice a pattern. I'd also like to point out, at least according to the DSM-5, that a sexual kink is only considered harmful if it causes harm to the individual or the people around them.
I'm not making this video with some kind of superhero complex trying to make the world a better place, because that's some dumb shit.
He says while claiming moral superiority by saying that lolicons are disgusting human beings.
But I am making this video with the intention of showcasing to every single person who likes this stuff that what they're dabbling in is wrong.
How retarded do you think your viewers are? If you don't know what lolly is, you're too young to use the internet, and or look it the fuck up.
The term itself apparently comes from the Russian novel Lolita, a book which involves a man in his 30s reciprocating sexual feelings with a 12-year-old girl.
Am I gonna have to talk about Lolita now? I think I'm gonna have to talk about Lolita now.
The people who consume this content all have the same intentions.
And your source is, trust me, bro.
The people who like lolly aren't innocently fawning over these girls and talking about how nice and wholesome they look. These people are using these anime images as a way to sexually gratify themselves.
Overgeneralization, because there are also lolicons that actually do only like the characters because of how cute they are. And these videos are becoming so predictable, I might as well make a checklist. And while we're at it, I'd also like to point out that some people actually use lolicon as a coping mechanism, and it actually is recommended to be used by their therapists. Now get an eyeful of that second comment. Yeah, you're the real hero here, dickwad. Just keep in mind that by calling all lolicons pedophiles, you're lumping in actual victims of sexual abuse as well. Of course, this coping mechanism isn't for everybody, it's only a select few people. But the fact that people still use it as a coping mechanism is still worth mentioning.
Who is the intended audience of lolly? 80-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 10-year-olds? Well, according to the Lolita novel, it seems that the intended audience are meant to be depraved 30-year-old men.
He's trying to correlate a novel, a fictional novel, about a disgusting human being, and applying it to a community who lust after fictional characters.
Goodbye.
I'm sure anybody of sound mind at this point would have just checked out and stopped watching the video. But unfortunately, I'm not of sound mind, apparently. But before I continue with this train wreck of a video, allow me to give a brief summation of Lolita as a novel and also what the author's intentions were. The story is told from the perspective of a man named Humbert Humbert, who sees himself entranced by a girl named Dolores Hayes, the titular Lolita in the novel. Throughout the entirety of the story, Humbert peppers his speech with elegant phrases and purple prose. This is done to make him appear nice and approachable, at least on the surface. As the story continues, we're introduced to Claire Quilty, who is what people would generally think of when the word pedophile comes to mind. He's depraved, has no shame in his proclivities, and is overall a disgusting human being, outwardly, and not afraid of showing it. Despite Humbert's attempts to paint Quilty as this unimaginable evil, It should be obvious to anyone that Humbert is just as twisted as the man he so despises. He's just better at hiding his twisted nature. Humbert later assassinates Quilty, Humbert himself dies in prison, and Dolores dies of childbirth. As I said before, Humbert seems approachable on the surface, but if you look any deeper, you'd see how depraved and evil he truly is. Sure, he describes Dolores in detail, but the more you read on, the more it seems like he's treating her as an object rather than a person. Never mind the fact that he's a grown man lusting after someone who's in their early teens. Even the author, Vladimir Nabakov himself, has stated that Humbert is not supposed to be sympathized with. He outright calls him a vain and cruel wretch who manages to appear touching. If you use Humbert as an example to show the typical audience of a lolicon, you really don't know what the hell you're talking about at all.
Now, the intended audience doesn't always accurately reflect who the real audience consists of.
Well, gee, devil. No fucking shit!
But I think it's safe to say that the audience who watches Lolly are primarily adults. I have heard of quite a few adolescents who are lolicons, but in this case, we're talking about the majority here, and the majority are almost definitely and undeniably adults.
Shadman's the exception, not the rule, because he drew art of actual minors in compromising positions, which would be considered illegal.
This is putrid. These people are practically drooling over drawings of little girls. I mean, this is sick, this is twisted, this is borderline pedophilic.
Don't you find it funny how these people that treat lolicons as some sort of evil hive mind all hit the similar beats whenever they make a video on the topic? And if you say that lolicon is borderline pedophilic, then you would be criminally charged, right? Because what you're doing is distributing CP, by your definition.
I don't think there's any sort of argument you could make that would be able to differentiate the two. Yes, while one involves real children and the other involves drawn children, the principle is exactly the same. The audiences both consist of primarily adults. They both involve children as the primary focus. They both revolve around the sexualization of these children, and they both consist of the same dipfucks repeating the same terrible talking points.
Same dipfucks that keep repeating the same terrible talking points. I take it your house doesn't have any mirrors.
The only difference in this case that you could find is, once again, one is drawn, another is real.
Does the child on the right look like a bobblehead with eyes the size of softballs and also looks borderline anorexic? If you think that the drawing and the actual flesh and blood girl are equivalent in any way, then you shouldn't watch fiction anymore. You clearly can't tell the difference.
In order for a person to justify Lolly as a fetish that causes no harm to children, they would indirectly be justifying pedophilia as a fetish that causes no harm to children.
You are not smart. Pedophilia is only applicable if they want to do it to real children. They can't fuck a drawing. And if you think they can, come back to me and tell you how many paper cuts your pee-pee has.
As long as they don't act upon their kink in real life. So does that make it okay? No, of course not. Just because something isn't illegal doesn't make it justifiably okay to indulge in.
And your source is, trust me, bro.
Your fetish, in some way or another, reflects your genuine interests as a person.
Some fetishes can also be used to cope with a trauma, but I guess you're just gonna, put that under the rug because that would hurt your narrative.
With that being said, I'd like to introduce you guys to a kind of scale I made called the Fetish Depravity Scale.
So we shouldn't take whatever you say here seriously. Got it.
For example, if you enjoy watching gay porn, it probably means you're gay.
I literally have no words.
But I think it's safe to say that the people who watch gay porn aren't doing it because they think it's funny or cool. Obviously, they're doing it because it reflects on what they're into.
I'm starting to lose track of how many times you said, I think, I feel, I think, I feel.
Gay porn likely translates to you being gay. Incest porn likely translates to you having incestual feelings, and so on.
Because I definitely believe that everybody that watches Yosuga no Sora and Kiss X Sis want to fuck their siblings. I've watched Kiss X Sis before, and I've never once had sexual thoughts about my family members. At all. But I guess if Devil were to hear me say that, he'd probably say, no, you're wrong, cause duh, idiot.
Now once again, I'd like to reiterate that this might not apply to every single person. There is a possibility of a 1 in a billion chance that your fetish may have absolutely no reflection on you as a person, but in general, that's not the case.
Once again, your source is, trust me, bro.
Therefore, a lolicon can't really deny that they're a pedophile, because that's what the fetish entails. It carries over to the attractions you have, in this case, a sexual attraction to a little girl.
This is the same guy who a few minutes ago put a drawing and an actual little girl on equal grounds, so I don't know why I'm surprised at this point. And no, lolicons aren't justifying pedophilia because there's no connection between the two. It's been proven.
I genuinely don't understand how you can look at anime images of little girls posing with their underage snatches taking up half the screen and think, wow, that's hot.
So if you don't understand, then why the hell did you feel the need to make this video? No wonder it has so many dislikes.
A while back, I watched an episode of the After Hours podcast where the host of the show, Augie RFC, brought on a caller who claimed to be a lolicon. The point of having him on the show was to debate the moralities and legalities of lolly as a genre.
Nice. More people I can add to the Don't Consume Any Media Again Rogues gallery after I got rid of Critical because he's not a dipshit and he's also not closed-minded. That was a mistake on my part. I'm not going to show the debate between Augie and the lolicon that Devil mentioned because it's not a debate. It's just them calling him names, making false accusations, basically how you would think this typical debate goes. But oh, look at me. I've constantly called Devil stupid and an idiot multiple times. Well, listen to the video and tell me if you don't come to the same conclusion.
Unfortunately, the consumption of lolly porn isn't a federal crime in the US. It stands as a gray area of whether or not it can be interpreted as a crime.
Okay, so are we done here? You just said that the law doesn't give a shit.
I was hoping that while I was researching, I'd be able to prove that lolly porn would technically qualify as an equal crime to CP, but that wasn't the case due to the same terrible talking point. It's not real.
Well, this is the law you're talking about, and unless you're in a position to change it, shut the fuck up.
As far as I'm aware, the concept of lolly porn hasn't really been challenged in court. Some states have it locally banned, others don't, and I don't like that.
I watched the whole video, and I was willing to go through it in depth, but now I'm just fucking done. You know what the law says regarding lolicon, and your only response is that it's not real, it's a terrible talking point because I don't like that. You're beyond the point of talking to or being reasoned with. So now, I'm just gonna keep making fun of you throughout the rest of this video for as long as I can tolerate.
So let's take, for example, an animation of a snuff film of a fake character being brutally murdered, tortured, and raped by another fake character, all for the sexual pleasure of the viewer. Is that film now okay because it's not real? The fact that something isn't real doesn't change a fucking thing, and it doesn't justify anything morally.
No one cares about what you feel, least of all the law. But by all means, keep digging yourself this hole until you can only see darkness. But this is somebody who thinks that somebody's fantasies will always translate to them committing real crimes, no matter how extreme their sexual fantasy may be. Never mind the fact that this kind of porn being available has actually correlated to a decrease in sexual-related crimes. As you can see on the bottom, a lot of people call Devil out on his bullshit, and one of the people saying that rape victims that fantasize about being raped said that they got more than they bargained for. These are the kind of people defending Devil who can't even understand something as simple as a fucking fantasy. No one with a brain can be this stupid. Rape victims who engage in rape play got more than they bargained for? And you want to say that lolicons are the monsters here?
It says in the anime that she's a 10,000-year-old dragon. Get over it.
Oh, look at that. A concept that will never exist in the real world is a thing in a world that will never come to pass in reality. So not only do you not know what a fantasy is, you also have no concept of suspension of disbelief. As long as the 1,000-year-old dragon makes sense in the context of the story, it can exist. So, get over it.
Calling lolicons pedophiles is like calling people who like shooting games school shooters. This argument sounds good on paper.
Because it is. This fucking pissy argument should be over now.
The purpose of a fetish or a kink is to fulfill some deep-seated fantasy you have. People don't play shooting games for the purpose of fulfilling a fantasy or because they enjoy the actions being committed.
You don't think that anyone plays video games to fulfill a fantasy? Like, literally no gamer ever. Have you talked to any real person outside of the internet?
These shooting games don't encourage you to shoot innocent civilians.
No Russian from Modern Warfare 2, Hatred, Postal. And what about games where you play as villainous characters like the original Prototype and Spec Ops: The Line?
Lolly serves the purpose of fulfilling a fantasy. Video games don't.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
You also don't need real children to be a pedophile. It can be any sort of child imaginable, and you would still be a pedophile.
Well, having the desire to have sexual relations with actual children makes you a pedophile, that's correct. Purely focusing on drawings does not. And no, contrary to what tards on the internet would say, not only do other people make the distinction of lolicon not being pedophilia, but that the actual term for pedophilia is a loan word.
If lolly porn is wrong, then you must think age play is wrong as well.
Well, you seem to believe that any kind of roleplay in general will turn people into a monster, so skip.
Watching lolly porn, and just porn in general, doesn't actually simmer down your sexual frustrations, but instead amplifies it. It causes all of your kinks and fetishes to bottle up even more until you want to burst at the seams. That's why guys like Ted Bundy, someone who was a massive porn addict, resorted to bottling up all of his sexual fantasies with depraved types of porn until he could no longer hold it in anymore.
So not only does he take the word of a serial killer who is known to be a pathological liar, that interview with Ted Bundy is the only thing that he sourced that wasn't a definition or from Lolita, the novel itself. Also worth mentioning is that plenty of experts have said that him blaming pornography was just another one of Ted's lies, and that it's not uncommon for people like him to blame his murders on something else. The fact that he took a serial killer's word at face value and disregarded all the information that said he was lying, it shows a lot about how much he cares about gathering information and how little he can actually critically think.
There are real children being hurt, and you're complaining about fictional characters. I'm having trouble understanding what the people who make this point want me to do.
To stop being a fucking moron for one, but here we are.
I'm sorry that you're so fucking in denial that you can't admit for a second that you may be in the wrong, so you have to come up with all these coping mechanisms and shitty points to try and shoo away the people who are challenging your stupid beliefs.
Look who's talking, acting like he's making some fucking crime documentary. Claiming moral superiority, treating his viewers like a bunch of fucking idiots when he's the biggest moron in the room. And no matter how many people in the comments say otherwise that you might be in the wrong, you just further prove that you are so close-minded that you cannot accept that fact. Fuck you. Yes, I get extremely heated a lot when I make these videos, and I also tend to be rather blunt. And I also admit that I don't have all the answers to everything. This is because I don't want to treat my general audience like they're a bunch of idiots.
If there's someone out there who can genuinely offer a good defense of Lolly, I would love to hear it.
You sit on a throne of lies.
If you couldn't be convinced by what the fucking law says, what makes you think that some random asshole on YouTube is going to convince you otherwise? If you try to debate with someone, it will just go around in circles and you will get absolutely nowhere except more frustrated. You think I'm speculating? No, because it's already happened. He spoke with a lolicon, and they got absolutely nowhere. Since the way Devil presented himself, he automatically thought that he was right before the debate even began, and the lolicon that he had on the show couldn't even back up his sources right and defended himself terribly. Literally anybody else would have been a better choice to debate with him. It shouldn't have been the person he brought on.
If there is a lolicon who is involved in my community in some way, get the fuck out. You're not welcome here. Seriously.
Does that sound like somebody you can have a debate with? Honestly. You'll shun people who like drawings, but the people who want to play judge, jury, and executioner will be welcomed with open arms. I mean, sure, these might be joking and they're just extreme jokes, but I mean, as with anything on the internet, it's 50-50. And as you probably saw from a few of the comments that I already established, some of the people defending him are utterly stupid and even worse than him. Like on the bottom, I don't think he portrayed lolicons as future pedos. Meanwhile,
lolicons are pedophiles, no matter how many fucking ways you split it.
When you make such a dangerous accusation like that, you can't just defend behind the it's an opinion excuse. Even lecturers at schools of law like Patrick W. Galbraith have this to say. Lolicon, especially as used among manga anime fans in Japan, is not reducible to pedophile. Separate words, separate meanings. The consequences of calling manga anime fans pedophiles alone are reason enough to avoid this slippage. Those consequences are dire. Politically speaking, I would encourage everyone to be careful about casually using the word pedophile. Well, Sorry to say, Professor Galbraith, but looks like your fears have been realized, because if you look at any video like this at all, you'd see people making these sorts of comparisons, all because they listen to some guy who goes,
I genuinely don't understand, and I don't like that.
Your detractors are absolutely correct. You don't know a goddamn thing about whatever you're talking about. You make a mountain out of a molehill and instead rally an audience that becomes genuinely confused, angry, and indignant when somebody defends their points because they don't want to be lumped in with actual criminals. You don't even take the word of people like Shota-kun, who's part of the Lolly Shota community, or people like Maybelle Redmond, who's a CSA survivor. And before I can get to my conclusion, why don't I read you the last passage in her article here? In the same way that a pedophile is being controlled by their id to abuse, you're doing the same thing, jumping to knee-jerk, shallow conclusions to satisfy some myopic emotional need and arguably social obligation without care for who or how you harm them. Your abuse victims just aren't children. So please, learn what your enemy actually looks like before attacking. I understand how hard it is to parse these things out sometimes and how emotional these things can be, even if you're only involved either as a family member or a friend of somebody who's been abused. But by refusing to understand what you're attacking, just as I did when I accidentally attacked a fellow CSA survivor due to my severely triggered state from the sadist I mentioned, you're harming survivors like me. Please learn and understand what we've gone through as survivors of this kind of human abuse. Without that understanding, you hurt us without even realizing. In short, Devil, you and the majority of your audience are extremely lazy and closed-minded. Lazy in both pointing out actual criminals and lazy in gathering actual information. I haven't been making videos for a long time, but I can confidently say, as of this recording, you're the worst anti-Loli con that I have seen. No contest. Full fucking stop. You were so lazy in the making of this video that you couldn't even be bothered to remember all the sources that you looked up. And you can't even understand basic concepts. That should tell anybody who thinks about this video for more than 2 seconds that there's absolutely nothing of worth here in the 18 minutes or so that you've recorded. And I know that my response isn't going to go well with your fan base or even you. I don't care. I can still defend myself with facts. You'll just stick to more knee-jerk reactions because you can't actually look up anything that can help your case other than feelings. Your video is a testament to that incompetence.
May every person that laughs at your sophomoric effort be a reminder of your eternal mediocrity and pierce your heart like a knife.
Now, to the rest of the people who stuck around, after this video, I'm going to take a few weeks break from video making. I want to focus on my artwork on Insta for the time being, but by all means, this isn't the end of my videos. I will come back. I just need a bit of a breather. That's not to say that I won't be reading comments or respond to them. I'll still do that. But as for actually making videos, I'll get back to that after a few weeks. You can follow my Instagram profile in the description of my channel here. And as I always say, thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking around this very long video, and I'll see you in the next one in a few weeks' time.